The market hummed with life as the sun slipped behind the hills, casting St. Lucia in a golden haze. Vendors shouted out prices, children darted between stalls, and the scent of grilled fish and ripe mangoes filled the air. But to Vanessa, all of it was drowned out by the man standing before her, Marcus King. She'd spent months trying to forget his face, his voice, the way his presence once filled a room and her heart. Yet here he was, looking at her as though the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her tone sharp, though her fingers trembled around the handle of her woven shopping bag. "I know," Marcus admitted, "but I couldn't stay away." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "You made your choice back in New York. I was the enemy. You crushed me without hesitation." His eyes darkened. "It wasn't that simple." "It's always that simple," she shot back. "You had the power. You used it." "I'm not proud of what I did," Marcus said quietly, "but I came here because I couldn't keep pretending I didn't care." "Care?" Vanessa laughed bitterly, drawing the attention of a few passers-by. "You cared enough to leave me ruined and humiliated in front of the entire financial world. Vanessa, do you know what it's like to rebuild yourself from ashes?" she demanded, her voice breaking despite her effort to stay composed. Marcus took a step closer, the warmth of his body cutting through the balmy air. "I know I was wrong. I know I let my anger, my pride, drive me to destroy the only person who ever made me feel alive." She shook her head, retreating a step. "Don't say things like that. Not here. Not now." "Why not?" he pressed. "Why not admit that we're both still standing in the ruins of what we had, and neither of us can walk away?" Later that night, Vanessa sat on her porch, overlooking the dark ocean. Waves crashed against the shore as crickets chirped in the distance. She sipped a glass of wine, trying to steady the storm raging inside her. Malik appeared at the door. "He's not leaving, is he?" Vanessa didn't answer immediately. "No, he's staying at one of the resorts." "You want me to tell him to get lost?" She gave a weary smile. "Do you think he'd listen?" Malik leaned against the frame. "He's dangerous, Vanessa, not just because of what he's done, but because of what he still means to you." "I know." The next morning, Marcus found her at the small cafe near the harbor. She was reading a local newspaper, her sunglasses shielding her expression. "May I sit?" he asked. Vanessa didn't look up. "It's a free country." He took the chair across from her, studying her. She was more beautiful than he remembered, her skin glowing in the tropical light, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. There was a calm about her now, but he could see the guarded walls she'd built. "I'm not here to make excuses," Marcus began. "I just want a chance to make things right." Vanessa finally set the paper down. "You can't rewrite the past, Marcus." "No, but I can change the future, if you'll let me." She gave a dry laugh. "You sound like one of those redemption speeches from your boardroom. I'm not one of your shareholders." "You were never just anyone," he said softly. "You were everything." The words hung between them, thick with memory. That afternoon, Vanessa walked the beach alone, the sand warm beneath her bare feet. She told herself she didn't care that Marcus was here. She told herself she didn't want to see him again. But when she rounded a bend, there he was, sitting on the rocks, staring out at the sea. "I keep thinking about that night in Milan," he said, without turning. "The night we stayed up until dawn, planning our future like a pair of fools." Vanessa folded her arms. "You mean before you decided to destroy me?" "I regret it every day." His voice was hoarse. "I let fear win, fear of losing control, fear of how much I felt for you." She sighed, sinking onto the sand a few feet away. "You don't get to walk back in and say sorry like it fixes everything." "I'm not asking for everything," Marcus said. "Just a chance to show you I'm not the same man." The next days passed in an uneasy dance. Marcus kept his distance, but always seemed to be near, at the market, at the cafe, even at the small library where Vanessa volunteered. Slowly, her anger began to fray. She hated him. She missed him. She hated that she missed him. And one evening, when a sudden rainstorm sent her running for shelter, she found herself ducking into the same cafe where Marcus sat reading. He looked up, his expression unreadable. Fate? He asked. Coincidence, she replied, but she didn't leave. He stood, offering her his seat. At least let me buy you a coffee. She hesitated, then nodded. It was only coffee, she told herself, but as he handed her the steaming cup, their fingers brushed, and the electricity that had always been there sparked to life again. Vanessa swallowed hard. She had spent so long building walls, but Marcus had a way of slipping through the cracks. By the end of the week, they were walking the beach together at sunset. "Why are you really here, Marcus?" she asked. He looked at her, his eyes raw. "To find the only thing in my life I regret losing." Vanessa stared at the horizon, her heart a battlefield. Could she ever trust him again? "Don't make promises you can't keep," she whispered. "I'm not promising anything," Marcus said. "I'm asking for the chance to prove myself." And for the first time in months, Vanessa didn't tell him no. The sound of waves lapping against the shore lulled Vanessa into a fragile sense of peace as she sat on her porch that evening. The wine glass in her hand was half empty, condensation trailing lazy rivulets down its side. From her vantage point, she could see Marcus walking along the beach below, his figure silhouetted against the fading sun. He had been here for nearly 2 weeks now, 2 weeks of polite conversations, cautious silences, and moments where her heart betrayed her resolve. She hated how easily he slid back into her world, as though the years apart had been nothing but a bad dream. But St. Lucia wasn't New York. Here her life had been quiet, deliberate. No boardrooms, no betrayals, no Marcus King. Until now. A knock at her door snapped her out of her thoughts. She set down the glass and walked across the wooden floorboards. When she opened the door, Malik stood there, his expression tight. "You have a visitor," he said. Vanessa frowned. "Marcus again?" Malik shook his head. "No, someone else. A woman." Before Vanessa could ask further, a figure stepped into view, tall, elegant, and familiar in a way that made Vanessa's stomach knot. "Hello, Vanessa." It was Celeste Whitmore. Celeste's presence was like a cold blade slicing through the humid night. She wore a tailored navy pantsuit that seemed almost absurd in the Caribbean heat. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked over Vanessa's modest dress and bare feet with thinly veiled disdain. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa asked, gripping the doorframe. "I came to talk," Celeste said smoothly. "May I come in?" "No." Celeste's lips curved into a faint smile. "Always so guarded. It's endearing." Malik cleared his throat. "I'll be nearby if you need me." He retreated reluctantly, casting a last wary glance at Celeste. "Say what you came to say," Celeste demanded. Celeste folded her arms. "Marcus has been here, hasn't he?" "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is. You and I both know Marcus doesn't do anything without an angle. You should be asking yourself why he suddenly decided to track you down." Vanessa crossed her arms. "If you have information, Celeste, spit it out. Don't waste my time with your usual games." Celeste's smile sharpened. "You think he's here for redemption? For love? Please, Marcus King doesn't believe in either." Vanessa's chest tightened, but her expression didn't falter. "You came all this way just to warn me? Why?" "Because I need you back in New York." Celeste's voice hardened. "There's a storm coming. Marcus isn't your only enemy. If you don't play this right, you won't have a life to return to, here or anywhere." Later, after Celeste left, Vanessa paced her living room. Marcus appeared at the door, his shirt damp from his walk along the beach. "You had a visitor," he said quietly. Vanessa turned sharply. "You knew she was here?" "I saw her arrive." "Then why didn't you warn me?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "Because I didn't want to push you further away." "You should have told me." "She's trying to manipulate you," he said. "That's what Celeste does. She's a viper. Don't let her poison you against me." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Funny, that's exactly what she said about you." "Vanessa, don't," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "Don't make this harder than it already is." That night, sleep eluded her. Memories of New York surfaced unbidden. The night she first met Marcus at a gala, his smile, his touch, the way he had dismantled her life piece by piece when she became inconvenient. But there had been good moments too. Moments that made her ache. The next morning, Vanessa found Marcus waiting outside her door. "I'm leaving today," he said, his jaw tight. She blinked. What? I don't want to, but I can see I'm not helping you heal. Maybe I'm only making things worse. Vanessa stared at him, emotions warring inside her. Relief, anger, longing. You think leaving will fix everything? She asked. No, Marcus admitted, but maybe it's the only way you'll ever believe I'm not here to hurt you again. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of waves crashing filled the silence between them. Then Vanessa whispered, I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Marcus said gently, just a chance to prove I deserve it someday. He turned and began walking toward the waiting taxi. Vanessa watched him go, her chest tight. Hours later, Malik approached her as she sat staring at the horizon. Letting him leave was the right call, he said. But Vanessa wasn't sure. She felt like a chapter of her life was closing, and she didn't know if she'd ever find the courage to open it again. Vanessa's phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, its shrill vibrations cutting through the stillness of the room. She stared at the glowing screen, her stomach twisting when she saw the caller ID, Anderson, Whitmore & Cole, LLP. She hesitated before answering. Hello? Vanessa, came Celeste Whitmore's voice, calm but edged with something urgent. We have a situation. You need to come back to New York, immediately. Vanessa sat upright, clutching the sheets. I told you, I'm done. I'm not stepping foot in that city again. You don't have a choice, Celeste said sharply. There's been a hostile takeover attempt. Your name is all over the filings. My name? That's impossible. I walked away from all of it. Not according to Marcus King. By the time the call ended, Vanessa felt sick. Marcus. She should have known his departure wasn't an ending. It was a maneuver. Hours later, she was on a private jet hurtling toward New York, Malik sitting beside her. He said nothing, but his tense posture spoke volumes. Do you think he planned all of this? She asked. Malik's expression darkened. I don't know, but I don't trust him. Neither did she. Stepping off the jet felt like stepping back into another life. Manhattan's skyline loomed like a jagged crown, glittering and treacherous. Celeste was waiting in the terminal, flanked by 2 associates. She looked impeccable as ever, but her eyes held an uncharacteristic urgency. We're hemorrhaging assets, she said as soon as Vanessa approached. Marcus and a consortium of shadow investors have been buying up controlling shares. By Monday, they could own everything. Vanessa clenched her fists. Why would he do this? Celeste's lips thinned. Revenge, love, power. With Marcus King, it's always some toxic cocktail of all three. At Whitmore Tower, chaos reigned. Executives rushed through corridors, clutching folders and barking orders. Vanessa pushed open the doors to the boardroom, and conversation stopped dead. Every pair of eyes turned to her, some wary, some hostile, a few relieved. She took a deep breath. Let's fix this. The next 48 hours were a blur. Vanessa pored over spreadsheets, called in favors, and strategized with Celeste until dawn. For every block Marcus erected, she found a countermeasure. But he was good. Too good. On the 3rd day, Marcus walked into the boardroom like a king surveying his conquered lands. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like sin and smiled faintly when he saw her. Vanessa, he said softly, as though they were the only 2 in the room. We keep meeting like this. Her heart thudded painfully, but she forced her voice to steady. What the hell do you think you're doing? Taking back what was stolen from me, he replied, and maybe, just maybe, reminding you who we used to be. This isn't about us, she said. Isn't it? The board watched in stunned silence as the verbal sparring escalated. Vanessa stood her ground, her arguments precise and lethal. Marcus countered with the same finesse that once made her fall in love with him. You can't win this, she hissed. Marcus's smile widened. Then why are you trembling? Later that night, in the quiet of her penthouse, Vanessa stared out at the city lights. She could feel the walls closing in. You're running on fumes, Malik said gently from behind her. I can't lose this company, she whispered. Is it the company you're fighting for, or something else? Vanessa didn't answer. She couldn't. The next morning, the battle resumed. Vanessa unveiled a bold counteroffer to Marcus's takeover, a restructuring plan that would buy them time. But as she presented it, Marcus stood. "Impressive," he said, "but you've forgotten one thing." "What's that?" He placed a thick folder on the table. "I've acquired controlling interest in your shares. You're out, Vanessa." A collective gasp echoed around the room. Vanessa felt her knees buckle. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I would," Marcus said, his voice low and intimate. "Unless—" "Unless what?" she spat. "Unless you walk away, tonight, with me." The boardroom erupted in murmurs. Vanessa's mind reeled. He was asking her to give up everything, to trade her company for her freedom and her heart. The boardroom fell silent, the weight of Marcus's ultimatum hanging in the air like a live wire. Every set of eyes was trained on Vanessa, waiting for her response. Even Celeste looked rattled, her usual mask of composure faltering for the briefest second. Vanessa's hands clenched at her sides, her nails biting into her palms. "You think you can buy me?" she said finally, her voice low and steady. "You think you can walk back into my life, wreck everything I've rebuilt, and then make me choose between the company I bled for and you?" Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm not asking you to choose, Vanessa. I'm offering you freedom. You've spent years building walls so high even you can't breathe. Come with me. Let me tear them down." "By destroying my life," she spat. He stepped closer, his dark eyes locking on hers with an intensity that made the entire room fade to background noise. "Maybe I'm destroying the life you thought you wanted to give you the one you deserve." A bitter laugh escaped her. "You're unbelievable. You're still in love with me. Love isn't enough. It's a start." "Vanessa," Celeste's voice broke through, sharp and commanding. "Don't do this. Don't let him play you again." But Vanessa's gaze never left Marcus. She hated him for knowing her so well, for seeing the parts of her she'd spent years burying. "I need time," she said finally. Marcus smiled faintly. "You have 24 hours. After that, the board votes me in as CEO, and you walk out with nothing." He turned and strode from the room, leaving behind a trail of murmurs and shocked expressions. Back in her office, Vanessa stared out at the skyline, the city lights like a million eyes judging her. Malik stood by the door, arms crossed. "You're not actually considering it, are you?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "You do know. You fought too hard to let him win now." She sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. "But what if I'm tired of fighting?" Malik's expression softened. "Then let me fight for you, but don't hand him your soul." That night, sleep was impossible. Vanessa wandered her penthouse like a ghost, replaying every memory of Marcus, the good and the bad. She thought of the first time he'd taken her hand in that glittering Manhattan ballroom, of the night he betrayed her with that hostile merger, of the way he'd looked at her just hours ago, like she was still the only woman in the world. And she thought of what Celeste had said, "Don't let him play you again." The next morning, the boardroom was electric with anticipation. Marcus stood at the head of the table, exuding calm confidence. Vanessa entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her face unreadable. "Have you made your decision?" Marcus asked. "I have," she said. The room held its collective breath. "I won't go with you," Vanessa declared, her voice firm. "And I won't walk away from what I built." Marcus's jaw tightened, just slightly. "Then you're choosing war. I'm choosing myself." Celeste smirked in the corner, clearly pleased. But Marcus wasn't finished. "Very well," he said smoothly. "Then let's see how long you last without your foundation." He slid a folder across the table. Vanessa opened it and froze. It wasn't about the company. It was about her family. Bankruptcy filings, foreclosure notices, a subpoena. Her mother's nursing home, her brother's small business. Marcus had found every vulnerability she had left.
"This isn't business anymore," Vanessa whispered, her hands trembling. "This is blackmail." "Call it what you want," Marcus said softly, "but I'll protect them, if you're with me." The room erupted in chaos. Celeste slammed her hands on the table. "This is illegal. We'll fight it." But Vanessa's mind was spinning. Her family, they had nothing to do with this war. She couldn't let them suffer. "Don't do it, Vanessa," Celeste warned. Vanessa's eyes met Marcus. "If I say yes, you leave my family alone?" "Yes." "And the company?" "It's yours. I don't want it. I just want you." The words twisted in her gut. She hated him. She wanted him. She couldn't tell where one feeling ended and the other began. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice breaking. Marcus exhaled, relief flashing in his eyes. Celeste's chair screeched as she stood. "You're making a mistake." But Vanessa didn't care. She was already walking toward Marcus. She didn't see Celeste's furious glare. She didn't see the board whispering behind their hands. She only saw Marcus. And as his hand closed over hers, she realized she had just sold her freedom to the man who taught her what love and destruction felt like in equal measure.
The air in Marcus's penthouse was suffocatingly still. Vanessa stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the glittering city below, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't said a word since they arrived. Marcus, however, seemed perfectly at ease. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, swirling it lazily before taking a long sip. "You're angry," he said, his voice calm, almost amused. "Angry?" Vanessa's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You just blackmailed me into leaving behind my life's work. My family's safety is being held hostage. Angry doesn't begin to cover it." Marcus placed his glass on the bar and walked toward her, his eyes unreadable. "You've always had a flair for the dramatic." She spun around, her expression fierce. "Don't you dare belittle what you've done. This isn't a game, Marcus. This is my life." His lips curved into a small smile. "Our lives, Vanessa. You just don't see it yet." The first night was the hardest. Vanessa refused to eat, refused to speak, retreating to the guest room and locking the door behind her. Marcus hadn't tried to follow. He simply let her stew, as if confident she'd eventually come around. But in the darkness, Vanessa's mind churned with plans. If Marcus thought she was going to accept her gilded cage, he was dead wrong. The following morning, Marcus found her sitting at the kitchen island, sipping black coffee. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp and calculating. "Good morning," he said cautiously. "Don't." Her tone cut like a knife. "Don't pretend this is normal." He raised an eyebrow. "Would you prefer I stay the villain in your story?" "You are the villain. And yet," he stepped closer, "you're still here." Vanessa's hands tightened around her mug. "Because I have no choice." "There's always a choice." Over the next few days, Marcus played the perfect host. Expensive dinners, silk sheets, gifts that arrived in elegant boxes tied with satin ribbons. But Vanessa remained distant, unyielding. Each night, she lay awake, watching the moonlight spill across the ceiling. Each morning, she plotted her escape. On the fifth night, everything changed. Vanessa woke to hushed voices in the living room. She crept out of bed, careful not to make a sound. Peering around the corner, she saw Marcus speaking to a man in a dark suit, his voice low but urgent. "She's not ready yet," Marcus said. "She doesn't have to be," the man replied. "The investors are growing impatient. If we don't deliver her soon, the whole operation collapses." Vanessa's blood ran cold. Deliver her? To who? For what? She ducked back into the shadows, her heart pounding. Everything made sense now. The sudden takeover, the blackmail, his insistence on keeping her close. She wasn't a partner. She was a pawn. The next morning, Vanessa played her part perfectly. She smiled over breakfast. She let Marcus pour her wine. She laughed at his jokes. But inside, she was building a plan. That night, she slipped into Marcus's office while he slept. His laptop was open on the desk, and she quickly scrolled through his files. Her stomach churned as she uncovered emails, contracts, offshore accounts. Marcus wasn't just taking over her company, he was selling it piece by piece to foreign investors with questionable ethics. And worse, there was a contract with her name on it. Primary asset, Vanessa Brooks. The sound of a door clicking shut froze her in place. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. Vanessa straightened, her pulse racing. "I could ask you the same thing." He took a step forward. "You went through my files." "I know what you're doing," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "You've been grooming me as leverage for your investors." His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You're smarter than they gave you credit for." "You son of a—" Before she could finish, he crossed the room in 2 long strides and gripped her wrists. "Listen to me," he hissed. "You don't understand the game you're in. If I hadn't brought you here, they would have taken you by force. I'm the only thing standing between you and them." She struggled in his grasp. "You expect me to believe you're protecting me?" "I don't expect anything," he said grimly, "but you're in too deep now to walk away." Vanessa's mind raced. She didn't know what was worse, the possibility that Marcus was lying, or the possibility that he wasn't. "Let me go," she whispered. His grip loosened, but his eyes burned with something dark and unreadable. "You're not ready yet." As he left the room, Vanessa sank into the chair, trembling. She had to get out. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now.
Vanessa moved with practiced calm, her heart pounding like a drum beneath her ribs. It was nearly 2 a.m., and the penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Marcus's breathing, steady and deep, drifted from the master bedroom. He was asleep, or at least she prayed he was. Dressed in black leggings and a fitted hoodie, Vanessa carried only what she needed: her passport, credit cards, and a flash drive loaded with incriminating data she'd stolen from Marcus's files. This was her only chance. She slipped barefoot across the hardwood floors, her movements deliberate. The elevator was out of the question. It required a security code Marcus had changed days ago. That left the stairwell. Vanessa's hand trembled as she wrapped her fingers around the cool metal of the stairwell door handle. The door didn't budge. Locked. Of course, Marcus wouldn't make it easy. She glanced around, her mind racing. There had to be another way out. The balcony. It was a 25-story drop, but if she could scale across to the adjacent unit, she might find a way down. She padded silently to the sliding glass doors and pushed them open. The cold night air hit her like a slap, sending goosebumps racing over her skin. Below, the city glittered like 1,000 diamonds. "Don't look down," she whispered to herself. Gripping the balcony railing, she hoisted herself onto the narrow ledge. One slip and it would all be over. She took a breath and edged sideways, her back pressed to the concrete wall. Halfway across, a voice cut through the darkness. "Going somewhere?" Vanessa's stomach dropped. Marcus stood on his balcony, barefoot in sweatpants and a t-shirt, arms folded. His expression was unreadable in the dim light. She didn't stop. "Vanessa," his voice was low, dangerous. "Don't be stupid. Stay away from me. Come inside, we'll talk. There's nothing left to talk about." She kept moving, but her foot slipped on the smooth concrete. She caught herself just in time, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Damn it, Vanessa!" Marcus's voice was sharp now. "Do you think they'll treat you better out there? I'm the only one keeping you alive." "You're the reason I'm in danger," she shot back. She reached the neighbor's balcony and swung herself over the railing. Vanessa darted through the empty apartment, praying no one was home. She found the front door and bolted into the hallway, sprinting toward the stairwell. Alarms blared in her mind. Every second counted. She descended flight after flight, her legs burning, lungs aching. She didn't stop until she burst out onto the street, gulping in the cold air. She was free. Or so she thought. A sleek black SUV screeched to a halt in front of her. 3 men in dark suits jumped out, moving with military precision. Vanessa froze. "Miss Brooks," one of them said, his voice smooth but cold, "you'll need to come with us." She turned to run, but strong hands grabbed her arms. "No!" she screamed, kicking and thrashing. "Let me go!" Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air. "Stand down." The men released her instantly. Marcus strode toward them, his expression a mask of fury. "She's mine," he said coldly. The men hesitated but backed off, climbing back into the SUV. Marcus's eyes locked on Vanessa's as he approached. "You were never going to make it," he said softly, almost regretfully. "You don't understand the kind of people after you." Vanessa glared at him, chest heaving. "I'd rather take my chances with them than stay here with you." His jaw tightened. Then I failed. Before she could react, he scooped her into his arms and carried her back toward the building. "Put me down," she shouted, pounding her fists against his chest. He didn't flinch. "You're not ready for the outside world yet, Vanessa. Not until I finish what I started." Inside the elevator, Marcus set her down gently but held her wrists firmly. "You hate me now," he said quietly, "but one day you'll understand." "I'll never understand." "You will," he murmured, "because the truth is far uglier than you think." Back in the penthouse, Marcus locked every door and window before leading her to the master bedroom. "You're staying here," he said firmly. "No more guest room, no more running." Vanessa stood stiffly, her back to him. "This isn't love, Marcus. This is control." He didn't respond. But as he left the room, she caught the faintest trace of something in his eyes. Not anger, not triumph. Fear. Alone in the dark, Vanessa sank onto the bed. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She planned. This wasn't over. Not even close.
The morning sun filtered weakly through the heavy curtains, casting the room in a pale golden hue. Vanessa lay awake on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't slept. Every sound in the apartment, every shift of air, kept her nerves taut like piano wires. She wasn't afraid anymore, not really. Fear had been replaced by something sharper, resolve. Marcus thought he had won. He thought he had her trapped. But this time, she wasn't running. She was staying, watching, planning. Because if she couldn't escape, she would burn it all down from the inside. Marcus entered the room carrying a tray, fresh coffee, toast, and a folded newspaper. "You should eat," he said calmly, setting the tray on the nightstand. Vanessa sat up slowly, her expression guarded. "You think breakfast makes this normal?" His eyes softened slightly. "No, but you need your strength. You've always pushed yourself too hard." She said nothing, watching him carefully. "Vanessa," Marcus hesitated, searching her face, "I know you don't trust me, but you're safer here than out there." She let out a hollow laugh. "Safer? You dragged me back like I'm your property." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned and left the room, leaving her alone with the tray. Vanessa waited 10 minutes before slipping out of bed. She moved silently to the door, pressing her ear against it. No footsteps. Good. She needed to know more about the men in the SUV, about Marcus's operations, about the why behind all of this. She padded across the hallway toward his office. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, the room was immaculate. Glass walls, mahogany desk, leather chairs. But her eyes went to the row of filing cabinets against the far wall. She crouched and tried the top drawer. Locked, of course. But Marcus had once been careless, leaving his key ring on the kitchen counter. Maybe he still kept it there. She turned to leave and froze, looking for something. Marcus's voice was soft, but it sent a chill down her spine. He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, an unreadable expression on his face. Vanessa straightened slowly. "I was just exploring." "You're a terrible liar," he said mildly. She forced a calm smile. "Then stop asking questions you already know the answers to." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement? Frustration? It was impossible to tell. "You want answers," he said, "so ask." She crossed her arms. "Who are the men in the black SUV?" "Private security," Marcus replied. "They work for me." "Why? To keep me in line?" "To keep them away from you." "Who's them?" He didn't answer. "Why me, Marcus?" she demanded. "Why trap me in this gilded cage? Why not let me go?" He took a step closer. "Because if you go, they'll kill you." "Stop with the cryptic warnings. Who is they?" Marcus studied her for a long moment.
The people I used to work for. The people you think you understand, but you don't. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. So, enlighten me. He shook his head. Not yet. I'm not your prisoner, she snapped. No, he agreed quietly. You're my partner. You just don't realize it yet. Marcus turned to leave, but Vanessa's voice stopped him. You're afraid, she said softly. He froze. You're not keeping me here from my safety. You're keeping me here because of what I know. He didn't look back. Finish your breakfast. When the door closed, Vanessa sank into the leather chair. So, he was scared. Good. Fear was leverage. That evening, she sat quietly in the living room as Marcus spoke with someone on the phone. She couldn't make out the words, but his tone was tense, clipped. Whoever it was, they had him on edge. Vanessa's mind raced. If Marcus had enemies, maybe she could find one willing to help her, or at least willing to destroy him. The next day, Marcus took her to his private club. She didn't protest. Playing the obedient companion was safer. The club was sleek and modern. Glass walls, velvet chairs, crystal chandeliers. Men in tailored suits whispered in corners, and women draped in diamonds laughed over champagne. Vanessa's eyes swept the room and settled on a tall man near the bar. He was watching Marcus with an expression of barely disguised contempt. Perfect. When Marcus stepped away to take a call, Vanessa seized her chance. She approached the man, her smile polite. Hello. He glanced at her, surprised. You're with Marcus Whitaker? For now, she said smoothly, but I'm open to better offers. His lips curled into a sly grin. I like a woman with ambition. Do you like a woman with information? The man's eyes gleamed. Let's talk. They spoke in low voices, careful not to attract attention. Vanessa didn't give away too much, just enough to whet his appetite. When Marcus returned, she was back at their table, sipping her drink like nothing had happened. But her heart was pounding. She had planted the first seed. Now she just had to nurture it. That night, as Marcus slept, Vanessa stared at the ceiling, a plan forming in her mind. If she played this right, she could bring his whole empire crashing down and walk away with her freedom intact. This wasn't survival anymore. This was war.
The next few days passed in a tense, delicate rhythm. Vanessa played her part to perfection, smiling when Marcus watched her, pretending to enjoy the gilded life he forced her into, all while laying the groundwork for his downfall. She wasn't alone anymore. The man from the club, Leon Cross, had agreed to meet her again. They spoke in hushed tones, in private corners where Marcus's eyes couldn't reach. "You're sure you want to do this?" Leon asked during their second meeting, his tone cautious. "Taking down Marcus Whitaker won't be easy. He's protected by more than money." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Vanessa replied, her voice steady. "I just need you to hold up your end." Leon studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'll get you what you need. Documents, contacts, whatever. But once we start, there's no turning back." "I don't want to turn back," she said firmly, "not until he's finished." Back at the penthouse, Marcus was unusually quiet. He spent hours locked in his office, making phone calls and reviewing encrypted files. Vanessa noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he read the messages flashing across his screen. He was losing control, and he knew it. Late one evening, as they sat across from each other at dinner, Marcus spoke suddenly. "You've changed." Vanessa met his gaze calmly. "Have I?" "You're quieter, more calculated." "Maybe I'm learning from the best." Marcus's lips twitched in what might have been a smirk or a warning. "Be careful, Vanessa, you're playing with fire." "Maybe I like the heat." After dinner, Marcus left for an impromptu meeting, giving Vanessa the opening she needed. She slipped into his office and began her search. She found what she was looking for in a locked drawer, a ledger filled with names, dates, and transactions, all tied to his shadowy empire. She snapped photos of every page with her phone, her hands shaking only slightly. By the time Marcus returned, she was back in the living room, curled on the couch with a book. 2 days later, Leon sent her a message. "Got the files. Meeting tonight. Usual place." Vanessa's pulse quickened. This was it. The pieces were falling into place.
She told Marcus she was going for a walk. He didn't protest, though his eyes lingered on her a moment too long. The club's private lounge was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and burning cigars. Leon was waiting, a slim folder on the table before him. "This is it," he said, "everything we need to ruin him." Vanessa opened the folder and scanned the documents: offshore accounts, shell companies, payoffs, even proof of political bribery. "This will destroy him," she murmured. Leon nodded. "But be careful, Marcus isn't the type to go down quietly." "I'm counting on that." As Vanessa stepped back into the penthouse later that night, Marcus was waiting in the living room, a glass of bourbon in his hand. "You were gone a long time," he said. She kept her tone light. "I took the scenic route." His eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing more. Not yet. The following week was a storm of covert moves and whispered conversations. Leon's team began leaking Marcus's secrets to the press. Small things at first, a corrupt deal here, a hidden account there. Enough to rattle him. Vanessa watched as Marcus paced the penthouse, barking orders into his phone, his calm facade cracking. "They're coming for me," he muttered one night, not realizing she could hear. Vanessa smiled to herself in the darkness of the bedroom. Good. But her victory wasn't complete yet. She still had one more card to play. The final strike would have to come from inside. The next morning, Marcus surprised her by appearing at breakfast unusually composed. "We're leaving town for a few days," he announced. "Why?" "Because I said so." Vanessa forced a smile. "Where to?" "Somewhere no one will find us." Panic flickered in her chest. He was running, and if he ran, her entire plan would crumble. She needed to act now. That night, while Marcus packed in the bedroom, Vanessa made a call to Leon. "Move up the timeline," she whispered. "Everything. Tonight." As Marcus zipped his suitcase, a loud crash echoed from the street below. He froze. Vanessa joined him at the window. Dozens of black SUVs were swarming the building. Armed men in tactical gear spilled out, shouting orders. Marcus's face went pale. "They found me?" Vanessa stepped back, her expression unreadable. "No, Marcus. They found us." His eyes snapped to hers, realization dawning. "You?" His voice was hoarse with rage. "You betrayed me?" She didn't flinch. "You betrayed yourself," she said softly. "I just gave them the map." Marcus lunged for her, but before he could reach her, the door exploded inward. Leon and his team stormed in, weapons raised. "Marcus Whitaker," Leon said coolly, "it's over." Marcus's eyes darted between them, wild with fury. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is," Vanessa said firmly. As Leon's men cuffed Marcus and dragged him away, Vanessa stood motionless, her heart pounding. She had done it. She was free. But freedom felt heavier than she expected. Leon approached her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "I will be." "Where will you go?" Vanessa stared out at the city skyline. "Anywhere I want." The sirens faded into the distance, swallowed by the restless hum of the city. Vanessa stood frozen in the middle of the penthouse, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. The empty space seemed cavernous without Marcus's presence, and yet his shadow still lingered in every corner. Leon leaned against the doorframe, watching her carefully. "He's gone. No bail this time. The charges stick." She nodded, but said nothing. "You should be celebrating." Vanessa forced a small smile. "Should I?" "You took down Marcus Whitaker. That's no small thing." But as Leon's words hung in the air, she felt no rush of triumph, no vindication, only a strange, hollow ache where her fury had once burned. The next morning, Vanessa wandered through the penthouse, barefoot and lost in thought. The marble floors were cold beneath her toes, the silence almost suffocating. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A flood of messages from news outlets and lawyers. Headlines screamed across the screen. "Marcus Whitaker arrested on federal charges. Offshore empire exposed. Insider turned whistleblower." Vanessa set the phone down with a sharp exhale. The world was devouring Marcus now, piece by piece. Leon appeared later that afternoon, carrying 2 cups of coffee.
He handed her one without a word, his eyes scanning the luxurious space. "You're really staying here?" "For now," Vanessa replied. "It's dangerous. It's familiar." Leon gave her a long, knowing look, but didn't argue. Days blurred together. Vanessa met with federal agents, handed over every scrap of evidence she had, answered their relentless questions. Each session left her drained, yet strangely lighter, as though pieces of Marcus's grip on her life were being peeled away. At night, she'd sit on the balcony, staring down at the city lights. She remembered sitting there with Marcus once, his arm draped lazily over her shoulders, whispering promises of forever. Forever had turned to ash. One evening, Leon joined her on the balcony, his jacket slung carelessly over his shoulder. "You're not sleeping. Neither are you. I'm not the one rebuilding a life." Vanessa sipped her wine in silence. "You know," Leon said softly, "you could disappear, start fresh. No one would blame you." "I'm not ready." "Then what are you going to do?" She turned to face him, her eyes sharp and clear. "I'm going to take what's left of Marcus's empire, everything he built off my back and everyone else's pain. I'm going to make it mine." Leon raised an eyebrow. A hostile takeover? A righteous one. For the first time in weeks, Vanessa felt the faint stirrings of purpose. The next morning, she donned a tailored black suit, her armor, and strode into Whitaker Industries headquarters. The staff froze as she passed, whispering trailing in her wake. "That's her. She's the one who—" "Did you hear?" Vanessa ignored them. She walked straight into the boardroom, where Marcus's executives were scrambling, trying to hold together a collapsing empire. "Ms. Brooks," the interim CEO stammered, rising to greet her. "This is, unexpected." "Not for me," Vanessa said smoothly, taking a seat at the head of the table. "You don't have authority here." "On the contrary." She slid a thick folder across the table. "I own 51% of the shares now. Marcus sold them to shell companies years ago to cover his debts. I've acquired every one." "You can't just." "I can, and I did." By the end of the meeting, Vanessa Brooks was the new CEO of Whitaker Industries. The headlines hit the news within the hour. "Vanessa Brooks takes control of Whitaker Empire. From victim to visionary, a new era begins." But power came with its own set of challenges. Old enemies circled like sharks. Disgruntled investors demanded answers. Lawsuits piled up. And yet, Vanessa felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Late one night, she sat alone in the corner office, Marcus's old domain. She could still smell his cologne faintly in the leather chair. Leon knocked lightly on the doorframe. "You did it. For now. You're not afraid." Vanessa looked out at the glittering skyline, her voice calm and certain. "I've already lost everything once. What's there left to fear?" Leon crossed the room, his tone softer now. "You've changed. People do that when they survive. Do you regret any of it?" Vanessa considered the question for a long moment. "No. Marcus made me into what I am. And now I'll make sure no one else ever has to suffer like I did." As Leon left, Vanessa turned back to the window. The city spread out before her like a kingdom. Her kingdom now. And she intended to rule it. The sun dipped below the horizon, setting Atlanta aglow in hues of gold and crimson. From the corner office atop Whitaker Industries, Vanessa Brooks surveyed the skyline like a monarch surveying her domain. The leather chair beneath her felt different now, not like Marcus's throne, but her own. It had been 6 months since her hostile takeover, 6 months since she'd pulled Whitaker Industries from the brink of ruin and remade it in her image. The company was no longer synonymous with scandal. It was a rising phoenix, leaner, sharper, and more feared than ever. But with power came enemies, and Vanessa knew they were circling. Her assistant Chloe appeared at the door. "Miss Brooks, your 9 o'clock is here." "Send him in." The door opened to reveal Edward Lansing, a Wall Street magnate with a reputation as ruthless as Marcus's. His tailored suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. "Vanessa," he said smoothly, taking a seat across from her, "congratulations on your little empire. You've done well for someone with no pedigree." Vanessa didn't flinch. "Cut the condescension, Edward. Why are you here?" He steepled his fingers. Because I like to back winners, and right now you're winning. But there's talk, whispers of unrest among your board, international partners considering a hostile bid, investors nervous about your methods. Let them be nervous. Edward's smile was shark-like. Or let me help you. Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes cold steel. Help me or control me? Think of it as a partnership. You get my backing, my connections, my resources, and I get a stake in Whitaker Industries. A controlling stake? 51%. Vanessa laughed, low, dangerous. You think I'd hand over my company to you? It's not a matter of if, it's when. You're formidable, Vanessa, but you're also surrounded by sharks. Without me, they'll tear you apart. She rose from her chair, walking to the window. The city glimmered below, a reminder of how far she'd come and how much she'd risked. You're right about one thing, she said at last, turning to face him. There are sharks out there, but I'm not prey. Edward's brow furrowed slightly. I am the apex predator, Vanessa continued, her voice calm but edged with fire. And if you try to sink your teeth into my company, I'll rip them out. After Edward left, Leon slipped into the office, hands in his pockets. You're making enemies faster than allies. That's how you survive at the top. And how you stay alone. Vanessa didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the city again, her reflection sharp in the glass. Marcus taught me power was about control, she said finally, but he was wrong. It's about choice, and I choose not to be anyone's pawn, ever again. Weeks later, Vanessa stood in front of a packed auditorium, delivering her first keynote as CEO. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, investors held their breath. Whitaker Industries was built on exploitation, she began. I know, because I was one of its victims, but no longer. Today, we rebuild, not on greed, but on innovation and integrity. We will lead, not by fear, but by vision. The applause was thunderous, but Vanessa saw the faces in the crowd, the supporters, the skeptics, and the enemies waiting for her to stumble. She smiled anyway. Let them wait. That night, alone in her office, Vanessa scrolled through an encrypted message on her private server. New threat detected, offshore accounts linked to Lansing, possible coordinated effort, countermeasures ready? She stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, deploy everything, no mercy. As the message sent, Vanessa leaned back in her chair, a glass of wine in hand. She had fought her way from ruin to power, from pawn to queen, and she wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. Her reign had just begun.